out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Fennell. Although I'm not George Harvey, you are Tom Fennell, but I'm not George Harvey. George is on a plane as we speak. Is that right?
Well, he's on his way to Boston to go to Kenosha, Wisconsin, I believe, to meet his son for a little rest and relaxation. But there won't be much rest and relaxation because his son's an engineer, and you know, engineers get together and they don't play mahjong.
Right. At any rate, I'm Roland Boyden, work for BCTV, and I have watched each and every of the 100 episodes that George and Tom have done of Energy Week, so I'm going to do my best to step in for 1 week only. George has prepared a series of the week's top energy-related stories. Now, George has been curating these stories ever since this show began, and actually well before the show began, through his own blog, which is geoharvey.wordpress.com. Each and every morning he gets up around 3 in the morning, so I'm told. I'm not actually there when he gets up, and starts looking through all the energy-related headlines from across the globe he can find and boiling them down into a daily blog that people can follow along. And then, midway through the week, he thins those out further down into, in this case, we have about 22 articles to go through. The best of the blog. At which point, Tom, he sends it to you, and you carefully curate this document behind us full of photos and links and text that we're going to see as we go through.
Try to make it a little bit more lively.
So we'll take you through the best of the blog through the week, and we're going to start now going 1 week back to last Thursday as news was coming out while you were sitting up here last week. So it starts the week before on Thursday. So here we are.
We're going to start today in Iceland.
Here we go.
Well, I just want to mention, we don't have time on this show to go into the depths of some of these articles that we talk about. And some of them are very interesting. So go to geoharvey.com. .wordpress.com.
Yep.
And these things will come up. You click on the link and you'll get to the original article if you want to delve into this further. And some of them are well worth doing. We just don't have the time in the show. My God, we'd be here a week or so if that's what we did. So, on with the show.
All right, here we go. UK Prime Minister David Cameron is poised to launch an ambitious project that could see Britain harnessing the power of Iceland's volcanoes within the next 10 years. The plan would involve the construction of 750 miles of undersea cabling, allowing the UK to exploit Iceland's long-term renewable geothermal energy. And this is an article from The Independent.
This is 750 miles away from Britain. But Iceland has the potential for so much extra energy. Not only do they have geothermal, they also have hydro. And being out there in the middle of the Atlantic, they haven't known what to do about it. And somebody's come along with the idea of connecting it by cable. I used to be in the cable business. When I was in the cable business, 750 miles of power cable was not within the realm of any company making cables at that time.
Especially 750 miles of undersea is a whole other element to it.
That's a lot of cable. It's a big project. We don't even know if it's going to happen, but if it does happen, it will be useful, very useful for Iceland and very useful for England. So we'll move along. And we will talk a little bit later about undersea cables here in Vermont, except they're under Lake Champlain.
I was going to say, hard to have true undersea cables here in Vermont. All right, our next article from Sun and Wind Energy. In the first 3 quarters of 2015, the U.S. wind energy industry has installed more than double the capacity it did in the first 3 quarters of 2014. There's now over 69,470 megawatts of installed wind capacity across the U.S. That's a near record of more than 13,250 megawatts of wind capacity that's under construction, with more coming.
Well, there's a map up there, and unfortunately the map wasn't, the lines of the states on the map weren't drawn very heavily, so you really can't see them very well. But right down the central part of the country, from North Dakota to Texas, there's a lot of wind power happening. And there's a little bit here in New England, there's a little bit out on the West Coast, nothing in the South. They have wind down in the South, don't they?
You'd think.
But they'll catch up. Let's see if I got any takeaways here. Well, yeah, they're concerned that the federal tax incentives for expanding renewables are going to go away at the end of 2016, and everybody's worried about it. My prediction is that they won't go away, but we don't know. We don't know. So let's move along to the next one.
All right, here's our last one from this last Thursday, October 29th. Billionaire Tom Steyer's super PAC Next Gen Climate launched an aggressive campaign against Republican presidential candidates who deny the existence of man-made climate change. Steyer, who spent $70 million on 2014 elections, has pledged to spend what it takes to elect candidates that will act on climate issues. This is from Green Tech
It's
Media.
interesting here because if you've been observing things, it's almost an article of faith if you're a Republican to deny climate change. And here's this guy saying, "You guys are nuts," you know, and he's putting some money behind it. And there's a little article here, a little graph here about people believing in wind and solar. And if you look at the public in general, most of the people think it's more likely that we will be using renewables than we will be using fossil fuel. So
We're seeing only 3% in that less likely for Democrats. And
yeah, they're pretty well convinced it's happening.
I mean, it's interesting how how uniform that is across the board, though. I mean, it's very because of it seems like because of just how prominent this climate change denying is in the National Republican Party. It gives off the almost, I guess I'd say, illusion that Republicans everywhere don't believe in climate change, and
that's not true.
Right.
That's
it's
not
just
true.
it's become this very.
But it has been, as I said, almost an article of faith. You know, you must say this to be considered a good Republican, and that's changing as we see in the debates.
I think every presidential election from here on out, it'll be, my prediction anyway, less and less of a topic that is safe to go to as a Republican candidate. But
There's a little takeaway here. Republican Senator Kelly Ayotte from our neighboring state of New Hampshire has come out in support of the EPA Clean Power Plan this week. We'll talk a little bit about her later.
All right. On to Friday, October 30th. In a Chilean auction to procure 1,200 gigawatts of power, wind and solar projects took 100% of the contracts, even though there were no subsidies for renewable energy. In the prior tender, 80% went to fossil fuels. 2/3 of the power under the latest auction will be supplied by 2 wind farms, and the rest will come from 3 solar projects. This is from Courier Mail.
And this is Chile, which has a lot of hydro. But they don't particularly have too much in the way of oil. So it makes sense.
So 1,200 gigawatts of power here. I mean, we're talking...
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Absolutely. All right. On to our next Friday, October 30th story. This is straight out of the Boston Globe. TDI New England, which is financing the New England Power Link, received a favorable assessment from federal regulators in the final environmental impact statement. About 98 miles of the power line will run under Lake Champlain, and 56 miles will extend overland to grid connections in Ludlow, Vermont.
There's a picture up there of the cable that they're likely to use. This came from the Burlington Free Press, this picture. So it's right on the money. That's a pretty interesting cable there.
That's what's going to run under Lake Champlain?
Yeah.
I guess if you were going to run electricity under the lake, you'd need to make sure you're not just going to run a standard power line under there.
The only thing that they will have, there'll be steel wires on the outside of that to protect it. There'll be a spiral of steel wires on the outside. But it's basically something like this. That's a pretty big size cable.
Yeah, that's like
I squeezed it a little bit to
volleyball-sized or
get it
something.
on a screen, but you can see by the size of that guy's hands. That's a big cable.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
All right.
You're back on, Roland.
Friday, October 30th. This is our final article from Friday from Microgrid Knowledge. After Tropical Storm Sandy, Hoboken, New Jersey examined grid security issues. The result was the Resilient Microgrids Toolkit, which provides stakeholders with the resources necessary to establish and maintain a clean and resilient microgrid. The toolkit can be used by any city looking to establish a clean microgrid. Microgrid's just a topic that comes up time and time again now.
Yeah, we've talked about microgrids, and basically it's a very, very small grid that usually can be islandable is the word they use. So if something bad happens to the grid, you still have power on a local level. And if they connect all these microgrids together, which is even inevitable, I think, you got a new model for the grid that's more dependable. And the story here is that particular lady, I'll bring her back up again. She has designed what they call a toolkit that other towns can use to develop their own microgrid. And she's got all the answers already. She's done her homework. And there are people here in Brattleboro that are thinking about doing exactly that. So we're going to get in touch with her, and hey, maybe we'll even get her on the show.
Pretty interesting.
So there's interesting things happening.
All right, on to Saturday, October 31st. An independent examination of 2 struggling coal-burning power plants in western New York has found that neither is needed to maintain reliability on the electrical grid, which could pave the way for their closure. The state's independent system operator said the plants can be replaced by transmission system upgrades. This is from Capital New York.
That's a picture of the Fitzpatrick plant on Lake Ontario, and it's one of the 2 that they're planning on shutting down. Well, I'm wrong about that. This is a coal-burning plant. Fitzpatrick is nuclear. They're going to shut that one down too, which we will touch base with.
I mean, I think some of the story here is how often have we heard over the years, if this one plant goes away, the whole grid is going to be destabilized. It's sort of this looming
you're right,
concept
but that's
out there.
disinformation,
Right.
It's scare tactics.
Right, and so to have the state's independent system operator say, the grid is going to be okay moving forward without these plants, it just, I think, continues to debunk some of that idea that these single plants are the last thing holding the stability of the grid together, which we really now know is not the case at all. I mean, we even had people here in Brattleboro long after Vermont Yankee had ceased to sell any power to Vermont, thinking that if Vermont Yankee closed, we wouldn't have enough electricity.
Crash.
Yeah, and meanwhile, not a.
It isn't the way it works. The electrons don't care where they came from. They get in there, they go to your house. It's not the same, not even the same electrons. Doesn't matter. Your electric shaver works in the morning.
Right. Well, mine didn't.
This picture
mine
now,
didn't work this morning, but it was
checked this one. This is the Huntley Power Plant outside of Buffalo, and it is the most polluting plant in New York State. So they plan on shutting it down. And let's move along to the next one.
All right. We are on to our next Saturday, October 31st story from the BBC. The UN released its assessment of national plans to limit climate change, submitted by 146 countries. Officials say the submissions, in their current form, won't keep global temperatures from rising by more than 2 degrees Celsius, which is the danger threshold. However, the UN report says that the plans are a major step, and the 2 degrees Celsius goal is, quote, within reach.
Well, that's what I was going to say. If the temperature rises exceed 2°C, this will lead to significant and dangerous climate impacts, which will especially hit the world's poor. And what this article also says, well, the rich aren't going to get away for nothing. It's going to hurt them too. So let's move on to the next one.
The United States Department of Agriculture has announced a round of funding in the form of loans and grants for more than 1,100 rural renewable energy and energy efficiency projects nationwide. These are aimed at helping small businesses and agriculture producers reduce both their energy use and costs. This is from Clean Technica.
Yeah, we've talked about this one on the show before. We don't know how much of this is going to come into Vermont. Vermont is rural, so likely some of this money, I'll call it, this funding is going to come into Vermont. But it's a good thing. It's moving along, getting rid of more and more fossil fuel and substituting it with renewables. That picture is in Puerto Rico, by the way, Puerto Rico Renewable.
Really?
It's a small one, but every little bit counts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And you can have small. I mean, you're not going to have a small rural coal plant suddenly pop up. I mean, isn't that part of the idea? You can have these small
yeah,
installations.
I don't think there's any
pop
such
up.
thing as a small coal plant. There might have been in 1890, but
Right.
there isn't anymore.
All right.
Okay, now this is an interesting one too. This is DuPont.
DuPont. This is an article from Hydrocarbon Processing, which I guess is a news source. It sounds a little bit like something else. But at any rate, DuPont has celebrated the opening of its cellulosic, is that right?
Cellulosic, that'll do.
Its cellulosic biofuel facility in Nevada, Iowa, with a ceremony including Iowa Governor Terry Branstad and many other dignitaries. The biorefinery is the world's largest cellulosic ethanol plant, with a capacity to produce 30 million gallons per year of ethanol from agricultural waste.
Just for a little clarification, we certainly are aware of ethanol being produced in America and used in gasoline, and that's still even controversial. This is the same ethanol, and they're making it from the same plants like corn, but they're taking the food out first. Okay, so you're using the corn stalks, you're using the corn cobs, but you're not using the corn that you could eat anymore, which is one of the problems with the traditional ethanol. It's raised the price of crops for animal feed. And this isn't going to do that. This is going to take something that's truly waste and turn it into power. Alrighty.
All right. Now we're on to Sunday, November 1st, with an article from Power Technology. Utah Red Hills Renewable Park is a solar power generating facility being developed by Skatech Solar in Parowan, Utah, with an estimated investment of $118 million. It'll be Utah's biggest power generating facility, and it'll be one of the biggest solar power plants in the country. It should be completed in December of this year. Whoa.
If you look at this picture, this is big. This is very, very large. Utah's got a lot of...
This is in the Red Hills in Utah.
A lot of space there, and they built this one, and nothing like this could anywhere fit in Vermont. There isn't that much free land. I don't think it'd be... I don't think they could build this on top of Lake Champlain. Not that they would, but...
Right.
But they're making progress. Things are changing.
Just that visual speaks a lot to the story. Good to see all those in place. All right, on to our next Sunday, November 1st story. This is from the OC Register. Battery prices are dropping, but utilities aren't quite fully comfortable with them yet, as revealed by Southern California Edison's recent proposal to buy electricity from a new natural gas-fired plant in Stanton, California, rather than install additional battery capacity as ratepayer advocates and environmentalists want it to.
Well, we've talked a little bit about this before, in that the San Onofre nuclear power plant has closed. And they're saying, what are we going to do to replace it? Okay, and renewables are a big part of the picture. But Southern California Edison is hedging their bets. And they're going to put some of it into a gas-powered plant.
You know, the role that batteries have come to play is something that you and George have talked about in the past. You know, if you can put it at the homeowner ratepayer level, batteries that'll help provide grid stability, that's going to
that will be happening here in Vermont, because Green Mountain Power has signed us some sort of an agreement with Tesla.
Right.
And we haven't... It hasn't even fallen down to the local level yet, but Green Mountain Power customers will be able to buy that Tesla battery at a good price. And this is coming down the road. The details haven't been established yet or announced yet. They've probably been established. But there's two things you can use batteries for. And one is to store energy when you're generating it during the day and it's not needed. So, you know, the sun is bright, your solar cells are working, and it's more than you're using, and it's more than the grid wants, so you put it in batteries. And the other thing is, people who don't even have solar or don't even have windmills are storing electrical power in batteries at night when it's cheap and selling it back to the grid. I don't think that's happening in Vermont yet, but it is happening in some places. We did talk about it on the show. A guy's got an electric car, and he's using a battery in his electrical car to store energy at night when it's cheap and selling it back. I don't think he's even driving the car. He's making money playing games with the electricity prices. There's a lot of angles to this. And we'll be seeing more.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, on to
Oh, this is a biggie.
Monday, November 2nd from
This
Clean
is a biggie.
Technica. Time to talk Volkswagen. I mean, this is
Yeah.
just such a, as you say, such a huge topic in this field. Around 8.5 million diesel vehicles sold by Volkswagen over the past few years in Europe will be recalled following the testing scandal that broke a few weeks ago. According to reports, a recall timeline has been approved. The company is apparently currently considering the option of simply buying back affected vehicles in the U.S. as opposed to a recall, I would assume.
Well, every day something breaks on the news about this. And I don't know what happened today, but it seems like maybe vehicles that are other than diesel are involved. I just can't believe how stupid these guys were to think they'd get away with this. This is a big scam. And it's going to cost the company a lot. I mean, the company, as we know it, probably won't survive.
It seems like, I mean, and when this story first broke on your show, George was talking about, between the loss, their losses on the stock market and the amount of fines they're going to have to pay, it'll be really hard to keep the.
Well, we
the
haven't
company.
even talked about the class action suits.
Right.
They haven't even put them together yet. Yeah, this is going to hurt Volkswagen. Volkswagen, as we know it, will be different.
It'll be pretty interesting to see too, as more from the story breaks, to see where this. Of course, everybody wants to know how high up did it go, how.
Oh yeah,
how deep is
well the
controversy,
CEO's
and-
already resigned over this. He's lost his job. He claimed it had nothing to do with this, but heads have to roll.
Right.
Heads have to roll. It's mandatory. I think it's the law.
And meanwhile, a source of environmentally friendly cars that were less expensive than hybrids and that people thought they were getting apparently don't even exist. I mean, all those people that bought the clean diesel
They
Volkswagens,
thought they were doing something right, and they get fooled.
and meanwhile they were dumping way more greenhouse gases into the environment than they would if they had just bought a regular gas
Absolutely,
car.
and the way more could be staggeringly way more. And I drive a diesel car, and it's old, and it's not very peppy. But I don't care, I just relax and I drive my car. But these cars were peppy, and they were told they were environmentally safe, and apparently you can't have both.
I think it's amazing to me it took this long for somebody to kind of scratch their heads over that and say, well, how are they really doing that? I mean, with all the sort of...
And that's exactly what happened. An external guy says, how are they doing this? This doesn't make sense. And he went and delved into it and said, they're not doing it. And the fit hit the shan.
All right.
Let's move into Norway. Well,
Yes.
it's Scotland, actually.
Scotland, here we go. Well, this is our next story, again from Monday, November 2nd. This is from Renews. The Scottish government has approved Statoil plants for the 30-megawatt high-wind 2 floating offshore wind projects from some 25 kilometers off Peterhead. The Norwegian company was issued with a marine license to build 5 Siemens 6-megawatt turbines on spar foundations. Statoil plans for final commissioning of the project before the end of 2017.
So this is interesting. The picture up there shows what's going on. They're towing that windmill into place. The one on the left and the far is actually doing the towing, and these other 2 tugboats are kind of steadying it so it's going in the right source. And then when they get it, they're going to anchor it to the floor with 3 large cables.
Amazing.
Floor meaning the ocean floor.
Right.
If in case you hadn't got
25
that one.
kilometers offshore. I mean,
That's almost 20 miles.
Right.
That's a good distance,
it's not like you're going to be seeing it on the beach or something. I mean,
But the advantage, they don't say this here, but these things are built in a factory. Onshore, right on the seacoast somewhere in Norway, and they're floating them out to sea instead of building them on site. So they're saving money, and they can put a lot of them up quickly. So this is only a pilot plant, but we'll see what happens. If it's successful, you're going to see a lot more.
All right, our next Monday, November 2nd story from the Straits Times. Africa's largest solar car park opened recently at the Garden City Mall in Nairobi. It aims to cut carbon emissions by 745 tons annually from renewable energy sources. The car park has a total of 3,300 solar panels, which are capable of generating 1,256 megawatts of electricity annually. It also provides shade to the cars.
The picture up there is nice. It's nice looking array there, and it's providing shade. It's a very small array. This isn't big at all. It's a parking lot.
Right.
But the sun gets hot in Nairobi, and so they put the cars underneath it. That's a plus, and they're generating electricity, and with electric cars coming, the very next step is for the electric cars to plug into these solar panels. This article doesn't mention that, but I'm sure somebody's thinking about it. Let's see if there's any more on this one. No, the next one's very timely.
Keystone XL. All right, this is from the
Very
BBC, and we are moving on to Tuesday, November 3rd here for this story. The company behind the Keystone XL pipeline asked the U.S. government to put its review of the controversial project on hold. TransCanada says the pause is necessary while it negotiates with Nebraska over the pipeline's route through the state. The move came as a surprise, as TransCanada executives have pushed hard to get approval.
Now, there's a map of where it's going, and if you see the red pipeline exists already, the blue dotted pipeline is a bypass. It's just going to increase the capacity. And there's a couple of stories here, but one of the stories is, and I'll read it from the article, a delay to the government review might leave a decision in the hands of President Obama's successor in the White House. Because right now, Obama has pretty much said he's opposed to this, although he hasn't acted yet. He said he will act before the end of his term. But meanwhile, these guys, I think they're hedging their bets, and they're saying, well, let's wait. Let's put this off, and maybe, just maybe, we'll have somebody that's more friendly as president. And by the way, this is a big pipeline. In case I can't even fathom this, but 830,000 barrels of oil each day.
A day.
Each day. And the Americans aren't going to get any of this. It's going down to Port Arthur, Texas, where it's going to be refined and exported. So this isn't going to help much of anybody in America, but that's the way it goes.
So yeah, such as the story of oil and also natural gas. We see these maps, and they use the same pipelines to ship. We were looking at a natural gas pipeline that used to be used to bring, energy into the U.S. and now it's going to be used to send it out.
We've talked about that on the show too. So there's a lot of strange things going on, and pipelines. Right in our backyard, there's quite a bit of opposition to a pipeline going through Greenfield.
Yes.
And you drive and
highly
Northfield.
Controversial. Yep.
Yeah, you drive down Northfield, the main street, and everybody's got a sign in their front yard, no pipeline.
Yep.
Except from one house. I guess he doesn't like his neighbor. Alrighty, let's move along to the next one here.
We've got another one from Tuesday, November 3rd. This is again from Clean Technica. A study published in Nature by scientists at Stanford and UC Berkeley has made waves for its finding thus far that we have badly underestimated the damage human-caused climate change will do to the global economy. It says wealthy countries are nearly as vulnerable to temperatures warming beyond 13 degrees Celsius as poorer countries. I mean, no one's escaping this. That's a
very, very good way of putting it. No one's escaping this. And let's see if I got any. Yeah, I do have a takeaway here. The temperature roughly reflects the current climate in many wealthy countries like the USA, Japan. Well, I'll go back a second. The authors found that an average local temperature of 55 degrees Fahrenheit is economically optimal. This is the average winter-summer temperature, particularly for agricultural productivity. The temperature roughly reflects the current climate in many wealthy countries, like USA, Japan, France, and China. If regional temperatures are cooler, then warming benefits the local economy. But if they're warmer, then warming reduces the local economy. So it depends on where you are, whether this is really going to help you or really going to hurt you, but everybody's going to take a whack at it, or get whacked.
Yep, everybody's going to foot the bill.
And we're back to New York.
Here we go.
New York. We talked about the coal plants. Now we're talking about the nuclear plants.
This is again from Tuesday, November 3rd. It's an article from Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. Entergy Corp, which owns 2 nuclear plants in New York, said Monday it will...
I've heard of that company.
Sound familiar. Said Monday it will close the James A. Fitzpatrick nuclear power plant near Syracuse. Entergy said it would close the Oswego. Entergy said it would close the Oswego County plant late next year or early 2017. State officials, including Governor Cuomo, vowed to fight the company's plans.
That is Lake Ontario up there. So this plant isn't really near Syracuse. It's about 75 miles northwest up on the lake, and they're using the lake water to cool the plant, which made sense. I mean, it makes sense. But Entergy wants to close it because it's not making money, and Cuomo doesn't want to close. No, Entergy doesn't want. Well, let's say Entergy wants to close it. Yeah, Cuomo's saying keep this one open and close Indian Point, and the reason for that is Indian Point's too close to New York City, and there's 20 million people in the New York City metropolitan area, New Jersey, Connecticut. It is dangerous. If something bad happens there, a lot of people are going to know it.
Yeah, that's a large-scale evacuation.
Where can you go?
Impossible to imagine, yeah.
They don't have the roads to remove 20 million people. It's one of those things that everybody's talking about and nobody's thinking about. We have to see how this one works out. By the way, Schumer is he's on the side of Cuomo. Schumer has entered into this too. He wants to keep Fitzpatrick open and close Indian Point.
Entergy, after closing, after having the state of Vermont be determined to get Vermont Yankee closed, now they're announcing they're going to close a plant in New York State, and the state is fighting them on it, trying to keep it open. So,
well,
more complicated than that, but it is, they must be thinking, you got to be kidding me.
The state wanted them to close it, and there was a lot of local opposition, as you well know. I mean, living right here. But the real reason for Entergy was they weren't making enough money.
Absolutely.
Money talks.
All right, we are on to Wednesday, November 4th, closing in here. This is another Clean Technica article. As November begins, promises from individual countries to the United Nations have addressed nearly 90% of the world's current greenhouse gas emissions. The world consensus aims to reduce and stabilize them in order to keep Earth's temperatures from climbing higher than 2 degrees Celsius by 2100? Is that the date?
2100, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, the backstory here is that there has been ongoing meetings with very many countries, like about 100 countries, small countries, big countries, and these countries have all come up with what they call INDCs, Intended Nationally Determined Contributions, which are promises. This is what we promised to do, okay? And these promises look very promising. That's basically what's going on here. And we're also expecting, and that's what these things are leading up to, the Climate Change Summit in Paris, which is coming up very shortly. And these promises are being made so that they will influence the Climate Change Summit, hopefully.
And where's the U.S. in all this with the...
We've made our promises too. We're not doing badly here. We're not doing badly. China is really ahead of the game. And this article told about some of the other countries that aren't doing anything at all. Boo.
And again, if you want to find out more on any of these articles, this is our Clean Technica article from last Wednesday, and they are organized by date on George's blog, again, geoharvey.wordpress.com. So
you click on the link, and this article will come up. And this is an interesting article. I won't say it's technical from an engineering standpoint, but it's technical from an economic standpoint. A little bit confusing, but worth looking at.
Absolutely. All right, we're still on Wednesday, November 4th, and our next article comes from CNN. Still reeling from the diesel emissions scandal, VW said it had set carbon dioxide emissions and fuel consumption figures to low when certifying some models. It said about 800,000, mainly diesel vehicles, were affected and put a preliminary estimate of the cost to the company of the new admission at about $2 billion.
It's going to exceed that.
Like I said, it's got to. I mean, it's just got to exceed that.
The class action suits haven't even been announced yet, and that's going to be a biggie. I don't know if it was this article or if it was another article on VW that we talked about. We didn't talk about this part of it, but apparently VW is going to buy back the American cars.
Yes, right. We had that in our previous article.
But they haven't decided they're going to buy back the European cars.
Right. I mean, one element to me that just has to be looked at here is, where is this? Because everybody thought this was an avenue toward greenhouse gas reduction. I mean, we talked about this in the previous VW. Has it actually been holding back car? Car manufacturers have have been notoriously the sticking point for making cars that don't guzzle
It hasn't helped.
fossil fuels.
It certainly hasn't helped.
And I think to have this real charade that this was a valuable technology in reducing greenhouse gases has just set everything back.
Well,
Maybe
we're back to the
void to
GOP
fill.
again, and Kelly Ayotte. So let's see which.
This is from Clean Technica, still on Wednesday, November 4th. U.S. Senators Kelly Ayotte, Lamar Alexander, Mark Kirk, and Lindsey Graham have announced the formation of a Senate Energy and Environment Working Group that will focus on ways to protect the environment and climate while backing clean energy innovation that helps drive job creation.
So this is interesting. I think what's happening is the Republicans, who, as I mentioned earlier, have talked about global warming or the lack thereof as an article of faith, they're starting to listen to their constituents, and their constituents are saying, hey guys, I couldn't grow Brussels sprouts this year.
Right.
What's going on,
Well, and the more organizations that weigh in on this topic, the harder and harder it is to be...
Did I bring up the picture of Kelly? I
let's,
didn't.
There we go. There she
My
is.
ADD is taking over.
I mean, we're talking about like the U.S. Navy saying that climate change is going to be the greatest challenge they face in the coming years. I mean, more, a few years ago
That's
when
dollars and
NASA
cents
came
stuff
out,
for them.
Yeah, and it's just getting harder and harder for Republicans to say, oh, it's these kooky liberal scientists, and I mean, it's just the
Well, it's basically money. I mean, where are these guys getting their campaign contributions? A lot of it's coming from fossil fuel companies, and the renewables companies are all small, so they can't really match the same kind of thing. So, it's practical from the standpoint of wanting to get reelected.
Right.
But it isn't necessarily practical for the people of America.
Mm-hmm. Well, we are on to Vermont with our...
oh, here we are. We're gun local here.
Yes.
This one's a goodie. This is a goodie.
So in Vermont, a solar array proposed for Brattleboro's closed landfill, an installation that would be Vermont's largest by current standards, could lead to a big payoff for Windham County municipalities. Estimates show that a typical town signing on to the project could see electric bill savings of more than 60% by the end of the 20-year contract. This is from VermontDigger.org.
That's 60, you said, not 50.
60%.
Yeah, at the end of 20 years.
Right.
By the way this is supposed to work is you'll get smaller savings in the beginning, and they build up every year until they're projecting 60%. 60% saving on your electric bill. That's significant.
Within the 20-year contract. So this is not
not going to happen overnight.
Right, but it's also not 50 years down the road or something like
that.
No, it starts right away. Yeah.
This, I believe, has to be finished or at least started by the end of 2016 for all of the federal tax write-offs to come into business, et cetera, et cetera. And I know I talked to Bob Spencer. Matter of fact, we're going to get him on the show here. As this progresses. And basically, he says, I don't have enough to talk about yet. Wait till this stuff really happens, and I'll come on the show and talk about it. But I know that Brattleboro is interested in participating. I know that the Brattleboro Housing Authority is interested in participating. And all of the other towns, I'm sure, are interested. And I'll end
hard
with...
not to be interested in 60%
How could you
savings.
not be interested in that? And I got a takeaway here which I want to mention because this would not have happened if it wasn't for former Windham County Senator Peter Galbraith. He put together a bill that allowed this project to happen, which is twice as big as any other project thus far in the state of Vermont. So we got him to thank. I mean, I'd say let's have a good going, Peter.
Yeah, that's the other, 60%, one of the eye-popping parts of that story, but the fact that it's going to be the single largest installation in Vermont, or they're projecting by the time of its completion, it'll be the single largest.
Well, things will change. At the time this was passed, there was legislation that limited the subsidies to projects under 2 megs. Okay, and this one doubles that to
Right.
5 megs. And things are going to change. I mean, there will be some other big ones here and there, but there's opposition growing to the big ones too. Some people, there's a guy running for governor that he's openly stated they're eyesores. Well, some of them might be. Some of them might be. And it's not the size, it's the location, it's the impact. If you can't see them, who cares how big they are?
And it seems like with that amount of savings, might even be, even if you can see them, isn't it worth it? I mean, it seems to me, we go through this a lot when we talk about the aesthetics of cell towers that pop up here. And of course, everybody in this region has a cell phone, wants better cell phone service, wants to use more cell phones. But we have all this debate over the aesthetic part of it. I thought it was interesting at one of those meetings. Somebody got up and did a little history presentation of just how controversial the utility poles were when they first came through.
Well, yeah, you're right.
I mean, people thought they were just the most god-awful, ugly thing, and they were not going to have them when they first came through, and they were incredibly controversial. Now, we don't even see them. I mean, every road you drive down has electric poles, has the utility poles. They're all up and down Main Street. If we didn't have them and we suddenly decided to install them, people would go bananas over it. But, because of their existing history. So I think it's my prediction that at some point, all these windmills, solar arrays are going to be everywhere, and nobody's going to bat an eye at it. Nobody's even going to see them, and nobody's going to imagine what it was like when buildings didn't have, solar panels on them. When every parking garage roof wasn't decked out with solar panels. And I think at some point
you're going to see more.
Yeah,
you're going to see more and more of that because it just makes sense.
I did want to say, because of the local impact of this proposed, our final story from Wednesday, November 4th, again, this VermontDigger.org article about this proposed installation on Brattleboro's closed landfill. I mean, this is going to be a topic I can only imagine will come up quite a bit in the coming Energy Week episodes, as you mentioned, having guests on to talk about it once the project gets more underway. But in the meantime, again, you can go to George's blog, find that VermontDigger.org article, and check it out, because it's going to be a big topic of interest for this area.
Well, I got something here that we talked about, but we got a few minutes left on this show. Some before and after pictures about climate change. This one's Rocky Mountain National Park. And the next picture, come on. Okay. Here's the next picture of this. This is a different part of the Rocky Mountain Park, but those trees up in the top were attacked by insects that would not have been there because it was too cold, and now they're thriving. And let me see what I can do to get the next one. Here we go. This is in Australia, the Great Barrier Reef. This is taking a big hit over there. It's shallow, it's huge, and the water's getting warmer, and a lot of the coral is dying. And this is what it looks like. What happened? Here we go. This is what's happening now. Okay, this is the Danube River. And you can see how full it was. And now the Danube, this is during a drought that would have been inconceivable a few years ago. And this is that same river. This one is the Alps. This is the Matterhorn. And there's a lot of snow. A lot of snow. This is the same Matterhorn, taken at the same time of year, but
The exact same time of year.
Same time of year, but this is last year. This is 1960. So there's a lot less snow. Moving along to this other one. This is the Muir Glacier in Alaska. And this is in late 19th century. And you can see how huge those icebergs were. And here is that same scene today. They're 11 miles away, 31 miles away. They're gone. This is in Africa. This is Lake Chad in the 1930s. It was the world's 6th largest lake at that time. I don't know where it stands anymore, but it's not in the same ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
This is it now. It's lost about 80% of its surface area since the late 1960s, a combined effect of irrigation, the damming of the rivers, and global warming.
80%. It's a startling
This
number.
one is in Panama. Okay, and this is the before picture. It doesn't say exactly where. It's the San Blas Islands off the Panama, so this is in the Pacific Ocean. And this is that same site, and that sign that says Despacio is on a highway. So the ocean has risen there, and it's a temporary thing, but it has risen because of rising ocean levels. It's the rainy season, so that will go away. But that's a road. Despacio in Spanish means slow down.
It'd make for a terrible morning commute right now.
For sure.
Or maybe a great one. You do it by boat on your way to work.
And we're back to coral reefs. This one's in Dubai, in the Emirates, the Persian Gulf. This is 2004. So we're not going too far into the past to see a healthy reef. And this is that same area. Reef was devastated in 2006 by harmful algae blooms known as the red tide, potentially linked to increased greenhouse gases and rising ocean temperatures.
And it's become a topic in the surfing community. What am I trying to say here? This is happening at reefs all around, and so if you are a diehard surfer, there's this push. You got to get to some of these reefs now and check them out before
they're still there.
Because, some of the most famous reefs.
The coral is degenerating rapidly, and even if you cured everything, it would take 100 years to regenerate itself.
Right. Yeah.
So it's there's a lot of stuff happening, a lot of bad stuff happening.
And of course, the ways in which coral plays into the ecosystems of those areas is critical. I mean, so there's, far-reaching impacts beyond not being able to go scuba diving there anymore.
All of the fish that live in and around and on the coral and stuff like that. Well, that's a second-order consequence we're not even talking about. But yeah, absolutely. This one is in England, and it doesn't say the year, but it was not very long ago because there's trucks and RVs in the picture. But it was once a busy fishing town that was packed with boats, fish sellers, and tourists. And now most of the fishermen have packed up. They're gone somewhere else. The port is now quiet, flanked by empty pots, nets, and dried out fishing boats, as global warming has pushed fish stocks northward. Only about 200 fishermen remain in Whitby. Now this is a picture of the world with climate change from 2003 to 2007. The average, I guess they're infrared images, and it shows this is concentration of carbon dioxide. It's not temperature, it's carbon dioxide. And the red areas indicate that carbon dioxide concentration is at or above 380 parts per million, which is the danger point, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And the bottom one is temperatures. The bottom one is temperatures in each region of the world since 1951 on the left and 1980 on the right. And it says that Earth's average surface temperature has increased by about 1.3 degrees Fahrenheit since 1880.
It kind of puts it in context. We have these articles talking about, they're talking about the potential dire consequences of a 2 degrees Celsius temperature raise.
Well, here's a picture of the dire consequences. It says, if this persists, humans may have to move to Mars. That isn't really Mars. It's a pretty place, though. I'd like to know where it is. Look at the striations in those rocks, huh?
That's where Hollywood must go to shoot their Mars movies.
One of these articles talked about that. Yes, one of these articles actually talked about that. Well, I guess that's what we've got here. We're down to about nothing. Oh, there's 9 minutes left.
We got 10 minutes left, yeah. But I think considering that we're lacking George's wealth of additional input on top of the articles. We did pretty well to take up our 50 minutes of our show. So, and maybe before we close out, can just plug the blog one more time to go take a look at that if you want any more information on these articles. And then, of course, it continues to update. So George is working on it each and every morning to put up information. And then he'll be back to sit at the desk with you next week.
We could tell jokes.
From me.
When does the chicken cross the road?
I don't know.
To get to the other side. That's a knee slapper. I got a million of them, friends. Got a million of them. Well,
Energy Week Comedy Extra.
Yeah,
make
Comedy
a whole
Extra,
series
right.
out of
Well, let's all say goodnight, or goodbye, or whatever.
Oh, now I know what you're talking about with the hand drama.
It's funny, isn't it? You're not looking in a mirror, you're looking in a
Right.
television screen.
We have both hands here. It's something.
I do that too. I want to raise my left hand, but it's the right hand.
Thanks for watching, folks.
To all the world, and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay